Welcome again to Joe Stunner Boxing. Gervonta Davis escaped with a draw against Lamont Roach Jr. last night. And I say escaped because to me he lost that fight. I had it 115, 113 for Lamont. And then there was the controversy in the 9th round where Tank took a knee and for whatever bizarre reason it wasn't counted as a knockdown when it absolutely should have been. Had it been counted as a knockdown and Lamont was given a 10-8 round in that round, he would have, I think, won a majority decision. Deservedly so, because I think he won that fight. But bearing in mind that Lamont is, I think he's WBA's super-featherweight champion. For him to jump up to lightweight and take on Tank, I think he came out smelling the roses, to be honest with you. Now, Tank was asked in the post-fight press conference, will the rematch be next? Will there be a rematch? And he said it's the fight he wants, but he doesn't think it will be. And the person that asked the question said, well, what do you mean? What's next? And he said, we'll let you know. It was that sort of attitude. Look, I think Tank Davis has, to be honest with you, even though he has achieved things, he's basically pissed an awful lot of his talent away. I think he's done it because he is part of that very strange, rather creepy PBC cult that thankfully failed attempt by Al Haymon and Premier Boxing Champions to sort of take over boxing and put everything under one umbrella in a sort of UFC sort of model. Turki Al-Sheikh is probably heading towards doing the same thing, except that he's got the sort of money that Al Haymon can only dream of. I'm opposed to that as well. As I've said before in videos, I'm absolutely 100% opposed to any kind of concentration of power, wealth, privilege, and so on in one place. You need checks and balances in anything if you're going to have any kind of capitalist system. And essentially, boxing is, it's a business. It's a business. And it's a capitalist business model, Now, let's look at Tank's career. It's because I've made a statement there that I think he's underachieved, to put it politely. So why am I saying that? I mean, the guy's been a 3 or 4 weight division champion. I mean, he did pick up a light welterweight, super lightweight belt when Josh Taylor had all of the belts. You weren't going to get him fighting Josh Taylor. Josh Taylor at the time was undefeated and had just unified everything. So Tank picks up some crap, super lightweight 2nd division trinket, an interim belt or regular title or some shite. But excluding that load of rubbish, he was IBF super featherweight champion. He's currently got the WBA lightweight title. And he has beaten some good men. I mean, it's just that he hasn't beaten the elites, has he? His entire career seems to have been a case of, I'm going to avoid anything that's 50-50. I'm going to try and half win the fight in negotiation. I'm going to fight either smaller men who are past their best. I'm going to put a rehydration clause in, which was the case with Ryan Garcia. I mean, the win against Leo Santa Cruz, for example. What was Santa Cruz? Super bantamweight to start with. He got a decision against Isaac Cruz. Cruz is a pretty decent fighter, but not great. On the way up, he beat Yuriorkis Gamboa, wasn't it? That was a 12th round KO or stoppage. And he beat people like Ricardo Nunes, who at the time had a pretty decent-ish record. Francesca, he was undefeated when Tank beat him. I'm going way back to when he was on the up. I mean, I think that was the Francesca fight was when he won the vacant IBF super featherweight title. And he also turned up in Britain, didn't he, back in 2017, because he fought Liam Walsh, knocked him out in 3 rounds. Jose Pedraza, he stopped him in 7. That was when he was on the up as well. So when he was coming up, he was promising a lot, but you were waiting for him to jump up, those echelons to the elite level. And, he instead he fought. I mean, he beat Rolly Romero when he was undefeated. He beat Hector Luis Garcia when he was undefeated. He beat Ryan Garcia when he was undefeated. He beat Frank Martin when he was undefeated. I mean, those were all in a row in 2022 to 24, something like that, 20 year. So on the one hand, his supporters will say, well, he's been beating undefeated guys. He's been beaten, and he has been. I mean, Mario Barrios, that was another undefeated fighter. He stopped him late. But there is so much more that he could have done because he is so obviously talented, that you kind of wish he'd gone after those elite names. He has never unified a title, okay, which is disappointing in itself. But what about fighting, say, Devin Haney when he was at lightweight? What about fighting Shakur Stevenson now? What about Gervonta Davis now? Davis and Stevenson have belts. What about an up-and-comer like Andy Cruz? I mean, Cruz doesn't have a great deal of experience, but he's clearly a very talented fighter. If you go back a little while, what about Lomachenko? Lomachenko's a lightweight. He's been hanging around. Kambosos was lightweight champ. What about calling him out? There have been no unifications. He's never been an undisputed champ. And he's beaten some good, maybe even very good fighters. And he's beaten a lot of undefeated fighters. But there's just seems to be that last sort of leap into elite level where you completely dominate a division and wipe everyone out like all the greats have done. He hasn't really done that. Well, he hasn't done that. And I think a lot of this is down to that sort of, like I said, that PBC cultism, whereby they want everything in-house. They want their fighters to fight not only fighters, opponents with with similar connections, but PBC fighters don't fight that often anyway. Now, with Tank, he's even talking about retirement now. He's 30. This is his first fight in 2025. He fought once in 2024. He fought Frank Martin, knocked him out in 8 rounds, undefeated fighter. He fought twice in 2023 because he beat Hector Luis Garcia and Ryan Garcia. The Ryan Garcia fight was infamous because of the weight stipulation, the rehydration clause, which drained Garcia. In 2022, he fought once against Rolly. 2021, he had 2 fights against Barrios and Cruz. In 2020, he only fought once, and that was Leo Santa Cruz. So he doesn't fight frequently at all. He's had 31 fights now with 30 wins, 28 KOs. But that's in 12 years. So it doesn't actually, when you do the math, it doesn't exactly work out to be a particularly active fighter. Now, I also want to address something else that people talk about, and that is that Tank Davis is the face of boxing. No, he isn't, all right? This is PBC nonsense, propaganda, complete rubbish. He may be the face of boxing in America. I don't live in America. That may be true, and Americans, as we know from recent political events, are prone to believe literally anything. And I lived over there. I lived over there for over 4 years. So I got a sample of kind of how insular that country is. They see America as being almost the world, or there's America and then there's the rest of the world. That's how they view it, which is a very parochial-minded thing to do, a rather foolish thing. But a lot of Americans do that. Not all of them, obviously, but a lot of Americans do that. So they may think Tank Davis is the face of boxing, and Tank, being Tank, he's not a particularly bright kid. He comes from a very modest background. They've waved, a few million in front of him, and he's quite happy. But the thing about Tank Davis, and Deontay Wilder, another PBC fighter who is very similar, is that because they are from very modest backgrounds, if you wave a few million under their nose, they're like, whoa, wow. I've never even imagined such money. I can have that. What they don't do is what Floyd Mayweather did. And whatever you think of Floyd Mayweather, I don't think much of him as a man, but as a businessman, he's extremely good. Because if you go back to when he was with Top Rank, he described, I think it was a 4-fight, $12 million deal as a slave contract. And everyone was like, slave contract? What an insult to people who actually were slaves. What are you talking about? Blah, blah, blah. And then he bought out his contract and went on to make $500 million. So he had a lot of nous. He had a lot of sus. But people like Wilder and Tank don't have that foresight. They don't see that bigger picture. And Tank is a very, very talented fighter, very talented. He has his flaws. He's too conservative with his output. I think to some degree, Lamont Roach fought brilliantly, had great tactics, kind of diffused Tank's. He stopped Tank from moving through the gears like he normally does, like he did against Frank Martin most recently. But Tank, despite having that talent, he can't see beyond that sort of PVC bubble, which is why he's sort of ridiculed the whole Riyadh season thing, Turkey al-Sheikh. He doesn't want to get involved in that at all. Of course he wouldn't, because they're outside the bubble. They're outside. They're outsiders. You know, we don't go with outsiders, do we, Gervonta? No, of course we don't. We stay in-house, keep everything nice, and it's all this other side of the street shit that they used to talk about with Spence and Crawford. And then look what happened when Crawford got his fists on Spence. It was one-way traffic. So I think Davis has had he's had success, he's made millions, but he could have made an awful lot more money, and he certainly could have created a far bigger legacy with unifications, with being undisputed, with maybe even losing a fight or two and having maybe a trilogy with someone. I don't know, maybe him and Haney, for example, or something like that when Haney was at lightweight. See, people ridicule Haney, and I understand that he has a certain arrogance that's not very appealing, but he went after that undisputed title. He went to Australia and fought Kambosos twice, was prepared to do that. He fought Lomachenko. Well, regardless of what you think of the decision, he actually got in the ring and fought him. He stayed at lightweight when it was a real struggle because he wanted to unify the belts. Tank's done none of that. Tank has to have everything his way. Tank has to have things completely tilted in his favour. Like with the Ryan Garcia thing, where, with the weight thing. It's just not, it just doesn't smack of someone of greatness to me, even though Tank Davis is a very, very good fighter. But it doesn't smack of greatness. Greatness is where you actually you face maybe 50-50 fights at least, or maybe you fight people where you're the underdog. Greatness to me is someone like Usyk, who has travelled the world winning everything he possibly can away from home and ducking absolutely no one. Right. Even someone like Anthony Joshua, who was obviously a flawed heavyweight, he never ducked anyone. Some people say he ducked Wilder. He didn't. It was the other way around. Look at the facts. I'm not going to go into it now. I've made videos about it before. But yeah, he's lost 4 fights. But he never ducked anyone. He fought everyone. He fought Usyk twice. He fought his mandatories. He tried to become an undisputed champion. And he didn't succeed, but he tried it. And that to me means he has my respect. Naoya Inoue is another one. Great fighter. Okay, he spent most of his time now in Japan because he's such a superstar. But he fought in America. He fought in Scotland. He moved around a bit. Tank's never, ever done any of it. He barely leaves, he doesn't leave the United States. I don't think he fought Liam Walsh in Britain, I know that, but is that the only time he's ever been out of the United States? I think it might be. Correct me if I'm wrong. So yeah, disappointing. I'm disappointed in Tank Davis's career. And I do like watching him. I like watching the guy fight, but yeah, it's all a bit disappointing, isn't it? Anyway, leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Just let me know what you think. And yeah, please, if you're new to the channel, you could subscribe. That would be great. And also that like button, give it a click because they count them for whatever reason. I don't know. Anyway, support the channel. Spread the word about Joe Stunner Boxing. Much love to all of you. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday and bye for now.